it's all right, the rush is going to
Okay, we got one more question, and then we're gonna have, everybody gets their minute for your wrap-up, okay?
It seems to me that the elephant in the room is politics. And when you talk to most citizens, what they want in an attorney general is a lawyer's lawyer. They want someone who they believe and have confidence in is going to represent the legal interests of the District of Columbia. They don't want a politician, even though we know politics and people skills are part of the job. How do we now, knowing that the petition is going to be issued the middle of November, knowing now that it's going to be a partisan election, you're going to have to run in a party primary in April, how do we now not wait and say, okay, so-and-so went and picked up the petition? How do we now go and recruit some of the best minds in the legal field? How do we assure that the office in its first year doesn't become, full of politics? I take your point, Mr. Nichols, when you say that I could be an honest broker, but I think that most citizens in the District of Columbia have a different memory of your tenure as Attorney General.
All right, but you asked a good question, and let's start with Phil.
Well, implicit in your question, even though you disagree with this, is that politics is a bad thing. Now, I know we read in the paper, we read about politicians, and we don't like that, but I look at politics a little bit differently, and that is being sensitive to and representative of the community. Being representative of the community, as you know, no community is monolithic. But still, those of us who are elected, we try to gauge what the community wants as we perceive it and be responsive to the community. I think that's all a good thing, and that's part of what we would have with an elected Attorney General. So, implicit in your question is that politics is bad, even though you did say in your question that we do want a person who's got, I forget how you put it, you didn't say people skills, political skills. I don't frankly know how you have somebody who has political skills whom you then don't turn around and say, well, they're being political. But I think that's all to the good. When it's not to the good is when a person doesn't have principles. And so it's all about a political judgment without any principle, without any value behind it. But that's really kind of a different issue. So, I don't know, that's my answer.
Anybody else?
I think the forum here tonight is one way to try to generate interest in this job and make the point about its importance. And frankly, I think there's a responsibility for each of us as a civic responsibility to try to talk to people and encourage people who would be good in the job to seek it out. I think there are a lot of things that we can do. I think I would go back to what Irv said about the ADJAC amendment. I think that would be a good thing to make sure that we can encourage people who are experienced members of the current office of the Attorney General to be interested. I think there are a lot of things that all of us need to do to make sure we have a good cadre of candidates and that we elect one.
The one point I would make is that politics involves money. As soon as you run for office, you have to generate money in order to be an effective candidate. And I don't know what the current state of the law is, the council, with what they can accept. I always was very unhappy about the fact the council has approval rights over any contract that's in excess of $1 million. It automatically injects politics into contract matters, which ought not to be. But unless the council can regulate how money is generated for the race of Attorney General, you're going to have politics, you're going to have influence, and you're going to have some potentially very significant shortcomings in the office.
I want to say that I agree with what Dorothy has said. That is that we need to look both within the government and outside for a lawyer's lawyer to be the Attorney General. It is a very difficult job. It requires great judgment and skills, lawyerly skills. I, for one, have been soliciting folks to run for the office, people both within the government and outside, people in private practice who are earning good livings but have the experience that's necessary. I think you need both civil and criminal experience. You need to have a wide range of legal experience. You do have to be able to operate in a political environment. And of course, you do have to have some management skills to deal with an office of 700. I encourage everyone to talk to people who you think of as lawyers, to consider this job. It is a tremendous service to the district to serve. It's a great honor to serve. I feel very honored to be appointed to serve. It's going to be a great honor for someone to be elected to serve. It's going to be one that has great responsibility. We're here where we have great law schools like this one in the district. We have professors. We have great law firms here. We have people in the public interest bar, and we have great lawyers within the government. I'm very hopeful. I think your question sort of assumes whether we should have an elected Attorney General. That judgment's been made, as Shelley said at the beginning. We're going to have that. We need to make the best of that. We have a lot of good people who could do it, and I encourage anyone who, after hearing this and hearing all the responsibilities and the opportunities that are presented by to run, and I ask you to encourage others that you think would do well to take the plunge and to run for the office. And then, most importantly, we need an educated electorate to pick among those people who are running people who are real lawyers, who are honest public servants, who want to do the best for the district and have made it clear how they will do it and have the experience, the judgment to do it. And I think we can leave it to the intelligence of the electorate to pick a really good person for that job.
So while you each think of your 1-minute wrap-up, the last thing you want to say, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's come out tonight. You know, we're going to continue this discussion. This is an incredibly important new part of the District of Columbia, having an elected Attorney General. We take it very, very seriously. And we need to continue the education. I promise you we're going to have it right here. Just testament to how important this discussion is. I see in the audience we have the brand new president of the DC Bar, Andrea Furster. We have the head of the legal services, the entire Legal Services Corporation, who's a former agency general counsel. We have the heads and members of all of the organizations, the 8 organizations that came out to co-sponsor this event. We have a federal court judge, Ricky Robert. You know, this is a very, very important discussion, and I thank you for caring and for coming out. And I know you're going to take this discussion down the road to get us to the best possible place. So, Phil, let's lead with you. You get a minute to wrap. Take us home.
Well, I think where I want to start off is the gentleman who asked the question about, in which he mentioned the disproportionate number of African Americans in the DC jail. And it's not, the question does not have an easy answer. But in thinking about it, one of the issues that I think is important with regard to the Attorney General is that we want somebody who is responsive to the community. Now, when this issue, the idea of having an elected Attorney General first came before the Committee on Judiciary, I'm not sure I fully appreciated what does this mean, responsive to the community. But over the years, there have been some cases, incidents that have happened in the District of Columbia where I felt that the U.S. Attorney was not responsive to the community. A hate crime, murder, homicide near the B-Bar a few years ago downtown, where I felt that the U.S. Attorney was not taking seriously the community's concern that this was a hate crime. It was just not treated as that. In fact, the person ultimately, I believe, pled guilty to, it might have been misdemeanor assault, which ended in a death, homicide. And I didn't think the U.S. Attorney was responsive to the community in that case. Or more recently, where there was a bicyclist. You know, when I chaired Judiciary, we had hearings on pedestrian and bicycle safety, and there was a bicyclist who had a video camera on his helmet. And so he taped the whole incident. I mean, he had it going all the time, I guess. But he taped the incident where a guy in a pickup truck gets right up against him, rolls down the window, swears at him, and then veers right into the bicyclist. The bicyclist falls off his bicycle. And the U.S. Attorney would do nothing, absolutely nothing. And you've got a growing number of people who are bicycling, who want to bicycle to work, and they want to feel safe on our roads. And so that means that we, the government, ought to be looking at how we can protect bicyclists, or at least protect them from an assault like that, and the U.S. Attorney was not responsive. Ultimately, I might say there was some pressure brought, and the U.S. Attorney did ultimately prosecute, and it was, I believe, for a misdemeanor, but that took over a year for that. Those were incidents that highlighted for me the meaning of responsive to the community. There are so many different ways that the chief legal officer, who does prosecution, who does civil cases, does the whole range of legal work for the government, can be responsive. And to me, that's what's important here, and that was a primary motivation in having an elected Attorney General.
Thank you. Peter?
Just two things. Number one, as the election goes forward, follow the money. You can talk all you want, you can philosophize, you can be in the abstracts, but ultimately, follow the money. Secondly, for this gentleman up here who asked a very good question, for about 25 years I represented classes of male and female inmates in all the D.C. institutions. Those men and women were prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney, but ultimately, when they were convicted, they were put in D.C. institutions. And when I sued the district time and again, starting in the 1970s and through the 80s and through the 90s, the court held the district had repeatedly violated the Constitution in how they treated those men and women. So the Attorney General better be on, his best behavior, because I'm going to come back.